like to welcome everyone today to the first of our roundtable webinar sessions. Today we are featuring some presenters from New York State Agriculture and Markets who manage a number of different farm grants in our state, and they're going to describe some of the different programs that are available. We also have Mr. Michael McDonough, who is a farmer from Ulster County and who has been a very successful recipient of farm grants, and he's used those to grow and develop his farm. He's going to share his experiences with us. Okay, Jessica.
Yes, thank you. So I am Jessica Brooks. I am the program manager for New York State Grown and Certified. I've been at the department for 8 years this April, actually the exact amount of same time as Emily. We started on the same day. And my background prior to that was working for a organic farm and distributor in the Hudson Valley that sold to New York City restaurants. And I did that for 14 years. And then I had a farm consulting business. And then I found ag and markets. And so I will get right into it. New York State Grown and Certified, just a little background, was launched in 2016. It replaced the Pride of New York program, which I'm sure many producers are still familiar with. The difference is that Grown and Certified requires a food safety component and an environmental component as well. And you have to actually be growing in New York. Since the beginning, we've had probably over, it says 3,000, we're probably at about 3,400 farms that have participated over the course of the program. And we're actually at about 950,000 acres with over 20 commodities. So you can join the program from anything from plant and animal fiber to cut flowers to sheep, goat, dairy, whatever you're making, I'm sure we have a category for you. We also have 15 or over 15 retail and distribution partners. So Hannaford, Tops, Price Chopper, a lot of these larger retail chains do have some sort of point of sale signage to help consumers find grown and certified products in the stores. We also, on our website, list those farms that have farm markets or on property on farm sales as well. So real range of scale. I wanted to just talk a little bit about the marketing campaign that we have going on right now, just to give people a sense of kind of what our messaging is and why you should join and why you should get a grant to spread the word. We're in the midst of a campaign with a company called Dixon Schwabel, who has developed this campaign of Harvested with Heart. I'm not going to read through all of this, but this is just kind of an example of some of the social media posts that have been running this year. We've created some really wonderful commercials as well. This next growing season, we're going to have billboards in metropolitan areas, and we'll be doing more cable and digital television commercials. So that's just a fun thing. More examples of the work that they've created. And then just some of the messaging. We really, Grown and Certified is about storytelling, and it's about letting consumers know that buying local supports your local economy. It strengthens our food systems. A lot of lessons that were learned during the pandemic, we're just trying to keep reminding consumers that it is really crucial to support your local farms so that they are around and how valuable that is. And then just a fun kind of seasonal availability chart. Our cooperative marketing program, that's one of the reasons I wanted to show you some of the marketing we've done to inspire those that apply for this grant. So this is up to $10,000 for marketing projects. We call it cooperative because it serves to bolden your branding as well as ours. So what we would ask is if you are to update your website to include the Grown and Certified seal, that is a live link back to our website. If you are sending, a lot of people have used this for postcards and mailings, that when you have your branding information on it, you also include ours. If packaging changes, again, we're spending $1 million on an ad campaign. And what we want more than anything is for consumers to be able to see that branding on packaging so it all makes sense. You can use this for geo-targeted digital advertising. People have used it for new farm signs if they're on a kind of a major thoroughfare that will be seen and as part of their marketing. This is not a competitive grant, so it is rolling and it's first come, first serve. We have $500,000 to spend. This is available to all producers of any agricultural product that are in the Grown and Certified program. I'm going to show you an example of one of the applications we've gotten because I think it's nice to see kind of how people are using this money. Again, they're doing some custom bouquet wraps with the Grown and Certified logo. This is a cut flower farm. They're sending out promotional postcards. They've got custom CSA bags that, just will continue to emphasize the fact that they are a member of the Grown and Certified program. And then some really cute you-pick flower vases that look like little glass mugs that will have the Grown and Certified logo on them. So they cannot sell any of the items that they receive grant funding for, but they can just be part of their farmers market experience or whatever it might be. This grant is called the New York State Grown and Certified Infrastructure, Technology, Research, and Development Grant. It is being managed by New York Farm Viability Institute. We are hoping that there's 5 rounds of this grant. It is a state-funded grant, and we have funding for the first 3 years secured. So this first round is actually 2 years rolled together. This grant is actually open until the end of the month, but there will be another round if you miss this one. The goals of this are really, this is a food systems grant. So this is specific to producers of food and beverages in the state. And it is a response, again, to kind of some of the lessons learned during the pandemic and trying to really strengthen farms' resiliency, helping them with automation and labor efficiency in case of labor shortages, and can also be used for distribution capacity. If you needed a eco cooler van, to be doing your deliveries, that's the sort of eligible expense. And then processing and packaging. I will say this is a highly competitive grant. Not all eligible ideas will win, but it is definitely worth it, as it is up to $250,000. So there's 2 tracks you'll see, that 20 to 50 and the 50 to 250. So you are competing kind of within your track and within a specific region. So the entire state's not competing against each other. It is regionally based. There is a 10% match. You can see kind of some math on that. So again, as I said, this is for food and beverage processors or producers that include maple and honey, and it also includes alcoholic beverages such as wine and beer and cider. We also have this open to food distributors and any retailers conducting distribution activities, as it's important to be able to keep the food getting to where it needs to go. This is a list of some eligible costs. The machinery and equipment is obviously something that is always very welcome for farms to hear that is an eligible cost. Land improvements. So eligible would also be something like permanent deer fencing, construction and expansion, or even acquisition of buildings. And you can just see the rest of those things. What is not eligible is the working capital, the purchase of land, and just regular passenger vehicles. Bottom line here is this RFP closes February 28th. I will say, I know Michael was talking about how many hours you put into going through a grant. What is nice about the way that this is structured is it's in a portal at the New York Farm Viability website, and it prompts you along. So even though it is a lot of information, it is, your answers can be pretty succinct in most cases, and it does kind of prompt you along. If you have questions about what category you should be in, because you can join as kind of like as a farm or a processor or a distributor, it really depends what you're asking for. So if you are a cidery, but you also have an orchard, and you want a piece of equipment for the orchard, you want to apply as a farmer. But if you want a piece of equipment that's actually going to be part of the cider production, you're going to apply as a processor. So I'm going to have my contact information probably a couple places. I think Emily has it on hers as well. If you have questions about what category you should be applying for, you can reach out directly and we can clarify that. Just in summary, there is my contact information, but some of the advantages of joining the program are that we do take producers to trade shows. The program is no cost to producers. If you are applying for produce, there is a cost to become GAP certified, but once you have that certification, there is no annual cost to be in the program itself. Our sister program is Taste New York. When you join our program, you get kind of additional signage in the Taste New York stores to bring even more attention to your brand. That is my email, my phone number, and my colleague and program coordinator, Laura Smalley, who does, everything that I do. So if you can't reach me, you can reach her. I'm going to hand this over.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Bear with me while we switch presentations. My name's Emily Cook, and I, like Jessica, we started the same day. So I've been with the department for 8 years almost. Before that, I started working on a farm crew in Pennsylvania right out of college and kept going until I was managing fruit and vegetable farms. Then I took a step back into cooperative extension in Ulster County. Then I made my way to the Department of Agriculture. I'm going to talk about a number of grants today. I will show you where to find the information and how to be in the loop. So don't worry if you don't get all this information down today. So I want to start out by explaining grants a little bit and how we get money and give out money, because it's a little confusing. My unit manages a lot of money that comes through the state budget and through federal programs. And then we use that money, do whatever the state has told us to do with it, or whatever the feds have told us to do with it. And then we put those opportunities out. We do that, as Jessica showed, sometimes we do that, we can give it directly to farmers, such as the marketing program, but more often we use a grant program administrator, which is the case with the program Jessica talked about for the infrastructure and development program. We're using farm viability. That said, who is actually eligible for most state grants are producer cooperatives, nonprofits, local, municipal governments, and educational institutions. Even though we don't make for-profit businesses eligible, you can be savvy about creating partnerships with eligible organizations and still benefit from being in a grant application. I think partnerships are a really important thing to think about whenever you're approaching grants, because funders often want to see their money benefiting multiple people. So you have to think about how to describe that in your grant. So even if it's just your business getting money, are you buying from other producers? Are you sharing equipment? Are you just using more product from farms around you? The partnerships are really important when you're thinking about applying for funding. Jumping into some of our grant programs, we have, since 2022, in the state budget, we've had funding for what we call our farmer grants. These are split into two opportunities. One is the Beginning Farmer Grant Program, and one is the Socially and Economically Disadvantaged Grower Grant Program. The Beginning Farmer Grant Program started out with $1 million a year in funding, and that one is being administered by New York Farm Viability Institute. Also, grants can be between $5,000 and $250,000, and they do require a match of 5%, a maximum amount of 5%. We have just closed the first round of applications, but this is going to be probably every 2-year program, and there are various tiers within the program. So even if it's 1 year of the funding, there might be several opportunities within that grants, and I'll get into that a little bit more. The Socially and Economically Disadvantaged Grower Grant Program started out with a pot of funding of $4 million, and then that went down to $1 million the next 2 years in the state budget. That is being administered by Northeast Farmers of Color Land Trust. They've launched it as Landing Access Novel Directions. That's their program name. So definitions are always important to pay attention to in grant applications. The Beginning Farmers Grant defines a beginning farmer as farmers who have not operated a farm for more than 10 years and who will materially and substantially participate in operating a farm within a region of this state. Socially and economically disadvantaged farmers mean individuals who have been subject to discrimination by their membership in a particular group, and economically disadvantaged means socially disadvantaged individuals whose ability to enter into farming has been impaired due to diminished capital, credit opportunities, or access to land. The Socially and Economically Disadvantaged program, they are launching this program in 4 different tiers or 4 different tracks of the program. The first one, the maximum amount was $5,000. That's to give especially startup businesses just a little bit of cash to kind of get going. That tier has just closed at the end of February. The other 3 tiers will open at different times this coming year. And they are basically distinguished by the amount you can apply for. Eligible projects that you can apply for are there's a pretty wide eligibility for what you can do with this money. You really are making the case in your application as to what the problem is you're addressing and why this solution is going to be beneficial for your farm. So it includes things like startup and improvement, expansion of a farm operation, worker apprentice training, marketing activities. This is one of the only grants I've ever seen that includes the purchase of agricultural land and physical structures, purchase of machinery, equipment, livestock, and construction costs. So there's a really wide use of these funds. And the eligibility is the same, and the eligible expenses are the same for both of these farmer grants. Moving into some of our federal programs, each year, USDA offers state departments of agriculture the specialty crop block grants. Part of that money funds the marketing grant Jessica talked about for Grown and Certified. Part of it funds our GAP certification cost share program. So if you're looking to become Grown and Certified and you need to get GAP certified, this is an option that will pay for your certification costs. It includes expenses of the actual audit itself, but also includes water testing and any kind of food safety training or consultant you want to use to help you develop your first farm food safety plan. So it's up to $2,000 your first year and $1,000 after that. We use most of the funding from our specialty crop block grants to do a competitive grant process. Again, our partners, Farm Viability Institute, run this competitive process, and it usually opens in the winter of 2026. The goals of this program address a lot of research priorities, but we've also added a project type that is for demonstration and training of equipment. This is where I see, like, if you're really interested in trialing a new piece of equipment, you could partner with a CCE or another eligible entity to apply for that grant. And then you would have to incorporate some training and demonstration into your project, but that's a way to partner with someone to access this grant where a for-profit farm isn't eligible. Next up, this was an entirely new program from USDA, the Resilient Food Systems Infrastructure Program. The goal of this program was really to affect the middle of the supply chain. So anyone engaged in aggregation, processing, storing, transportation, or distribution of food. We have closed the round for large infrastructure grants, And we will be moving on to a round that are equipment-only grants. I think a lot of growers will be very interested in this. The grants are up to $100,000 with no match. I can't say exactly when this is going to launch. To get started, one thing you can do is register for a UEI number at sam.gov. That's something you usually have to get for any kind of federal grant you are receiving. So just some examples of things that would qualify for this grant. One of the only things that doesn't qualify is production, on-farm production. So it has to be post-harvest activities. So things like wash and pack are eligible, storage is eligible, so refrigerators, any kind of processing you're looking to get into, that would be eligible. The Northeast Regional Food Business Center, this was a competitive grant that we participated in doing an application for. The grant is actually held by the Northeast Association of State Departments of Agriculture, and Ag and Markets. New York Ag and Markets is a key partner. So we're very involved in this grant. The goal of this grant is to really build a resilient system throughout the Northeast. The center provides technical assistance. So we have grant opportunities for technical assistance providers. But maybe more interesting to you all is the Business Builder Awards, which are very similar to the equipment-only awards I just described. They're also up to $100,000 and can be for special purpose equipment, but it can also be for business development, technical assistance. So you just want to get some training on QuickBooks, or you want to develop a marketing plan or develop a logo. So this can be very focused on your own farm. But again, production expenses are not eligible. This grant actually launches February 24th, so it is about to open. So how to find out about state grant? One way to find out about state grants is to go to the Ag and Markets website, go to the Business Development tab, and you'll see a funding opportunities option. This does not always include opportunities that a grant administrator is putting out. So these will be grants that are offered by the departments. That can be a little confusing. For example, you'd see a beginning farmer grant administrator opportunity on this webpage, and that would be us putting out a competitive request for proposals for the grant administrator, not the farmer projects. We are always announcing these through our social media. And one good way to keep up to date is to sign up for the monthly harvest newsletter, which you can find on the homepage of the Ag and Markets website. If you just scroll all the way to the bottom, you can sign up for that. Our partners who act as administrators also do a ton of outreach. When we announce that there will be an opportunity and we announce who the administrator is going to be, you can just keep tabs on their website to keep up to date with when they have a timeline and when they are going to release the applications for the actual farmers to apply. And that is all for me. Here is my contact information and Jessica's email again. Sometimes we do this together in one presentation. Feel free to reach out. I may have one of my program managers respond to you. So if it's not me getting back to you directly, it will be someone on my team.
Thank you, Emily. Very informative. Now we're going to hear from Michael, who has had a lot of success with farm grants. Okay, Michael, take it away.
All righty. Hi, I'm Michael McDonough. I'm a farmer in Ulster County. I do microgreens, which are a specialty crop, and I've been doing them about 9 years, which is important because that's going to be the end of my beginning farmer days next year. We run a super efficient greenhouse that I developed actually with grants from NYSERDA. And I'm going to give you a list of the grants that I've received. I don't know if it's exhaustive, but it's pretty close. I've gotten over $3 million worth of grants in my career, but a lot of that was as an architect. So that's where I learned how to do this, through architecture grants, and particularly through NYSERDA. Now, we didn't mention NYSERDA today, but everyone, so I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. So what they do occasionally is they'll have R&D grants. Emily in particular mentioned that there were grants that were administered through secondary partners, and sometimes you can find opportunities where you least expect them. The Farm Viability Institute may have something to do with equipment, and you may be able to partner with another agency to do similar or parallel research. And that's kind of how I got into the farm business, actually. So here's the list of stuff I've got. NYSERDA, I started actually in farming through an emissions reduction program. I had an idea to take something I developed for residential buildings, which was saving energy through configuring buildings in a very specific way and running them essentially on geothermal and solar, and coming up with 90% energy reduction. So we were pretty successful with that. My team won a number of prestigious engineering awards, the highest in the world, actually, 3 of them. So then I went to NYSERDA and I said, hey, maybe we could do this in farming. And we were successful. And that ended up with me building a greenhouse with some of my money and some money from private investors. And that greenhouse became a test site. So in order to prove the viability of farming, you, for better or worse, have to become a farmer. So that's what I did. And I've been doing that for, as I said, just under 10 years. So I very quickly found that farming is not very profitable. I believe about 95% of the farms in New York State lose money every year. Sometimes there are offsets for that in terms of tax benefits or whatever. I think about 5% of the farms actually make money, and they have a very low profitability rate. It's like 2.5% or something. So grants can very quickly become part of your success strategy in farming. And so having learned about that through the grapevine, I started getting interested in farming grants. So one thing I did was I joined my local Growers Association, which in Ulster County is called Rondout Valley Growers Association. And they send out newsletters, and these newsletters started talking about grants. So I had some experience with the Energy and Research Development Authority, and I learned a lot through them. They are highly, highly competitive, and they can take a year to apply. My average burn rate on the application was 40 to 60 hours, with 2 or 3 times that in terms of follow-up administration and so forth. So it's a time suck, but my philosophy was, well, if I put in X hours and I look at how much money I got, it's a pretty good hourly rate, certainly beats farming. So through my local growing association, I learned about other grants. And one of the first was the USDA organic certification and GAPS reimbursement stuff. Some of that is handled by local agencies. Some of that you have to take care of yourself. There's a lot of due diligence required in this stuff, a lot of follow-up, a lot of deadlines, tons of paperwork. But if you want organic certification or you want help with it, all the stuff that Jessica and Emily mentioned, it's really, really helpful. It could cover 50% or more of your costs. So then from there, I, again, through Emily and Jessica, I learned about what's called a producer's grant. It was particularly useful during the pandemic. And we didn't have adequate facilities for our workers. And so we got some help constructing a kitchen where we could process food, including maple and other items. And we could use it for cleaning. So I could disperse my staff around the farm instead of having them on top of one another or staggering their hours. We never closed for 1 second during the pandemic. We kept the farm going throughout, as was requested. Food service is important. That was beneficial because that wasn't just reimbursement. That was actually helping with construction. And we were successful with that grant. That took 4 years. just to give you an idea on time frame. But it's not really necessarily connected to the grant. It was during the pandemic, and everything went wrong all the time. You know, things that would take a day to order took 6 months. Equipment would come in, it would be defective. The guarantees on it would be worthless. The companies would go out of business. So all in all, in 4 years, maybe we did a year or 2 years worth of work, but again, definitely worth it in terms of time invested. Then I got an FSA, again, is Farm Service Association. It's affiliated with USDA. That's an incredibly important group of offices around the state. Definitely look at them. They can be very helpful on helping you find grants, administer them. Some of them, like reimbursement programs, they do. And that may either supplement or supplant what Ag and Markets can do. Distributors, food distributors, supermarkets like Hannaford, in some cases, will also help you get reimbursed for your program requirements like GAPS or organic certification. We recently got what's called an NRCS, Natural Research Conservation Service, for forest restoration. We sit on 30 acres of land, but only about 10% of it is used for production because I have this very high efficiency greenhouse, and part of the strategy there was to keep the forest that it sits in healthy and viable. So we got a grant for that, and after a year of work, it's on hold due to the current administration, with no idea as to whether or not it's ever going to be reinstated. So all kinds of things can happen in this process. So some of the things I've learned are the most important thing is to read the grant. And that may seem simple, but in my experience, both personally and with people who wanted to partner with me or who had ideas and came to me for advice and opinion, basically, you can't get too creative, and you have to get used to hearing the word no. And the reason is these grants are very, very specific and highly, highly circumscribed. So what I always tell people, and Emily and Jessica, forgive me, the grant application process is checking boxes, and on the part of the people who are going to give you the grant. So you have to be in that mindset. So, you know, some people have come to me and say, oh, I have this amazing innovation for lighting in greenhouses, and it's going to change the entire industry. Can I get a grant? So I'll go to one of the websites and I'll look up what's available, and the answer is often no. The answer might be, well, if you bought fluorescent light bulbs, you could get a reimbursement. But this year, there's no money for development for greenhouse lighting. And then the person will say, but this is going to change the world. You know, aren't they interested? And I'll say, if there's not a box on the grant to be checked, no. And that's a hard lesson to learn, because remember, it's 40 to 60 hours to fill this stuff out. And if you can't find the sentence in the grant or paragraph that describes what you want to do, that's 40 or 60 hours wasted. So you can be filtered by filling out the forms and spending a lot of time, which you probably don't have, or you can read carefully. The other thing is you can seek advice from the grant giving institution. Now that could take the form of a phone call, although it's probably better to put in writing. So that's why you've seen a lot of email addresses here. You know, put the stuff in an email and send it off. I have found everybody in agencies extremely responsive in very timely manners to any written inquiries. I generally find that the program administrators are absolutely sincere, devoted people who truly, truly want to help you. So no doesn't mean drop dead. No means maybe next year, maybe another program. Maybe if you did this, partner with someone else you could get it. So that's sort of broad. The other thing I think is important was mentioned was you have to sign up for newsletters. Now, remember, my first experience was joining Rondout Valley Growers Association and reading a newsletter that came out every Friday. You may have one in your county, you may not. You may just have to go to the sites that are recommended here today. You may find others. There are people who are professional grant writers who you may be able to get assistance from, but you have to reach out. If you sign up, the stuff will end up in your inbox. Maybe. Sometimes it doesn't. I've seen glitches on the NYSERDA site where I had a year with no updates, even though I had signed up. So you got to stay on this stuff. It's a job, okay? No one's going to drop the stuff in your lap, and they're not going to coddle you. But if you follow their rules and you remember what their job is, which is to check the appropriate box that you did it right, then you can have really considerable success. You want to get creative, but not too creative. You want to stay, in the lines. Seek help and read. Read. I studied, among other things, poetry. We used to do what are called close reading. You would read every line. You would break it down word by word. In some cases, when I was studying linguistics and semiology, you'd break it down by syllable, right? You want to close read your grants, okay? Extremely, extremely important. Don't leave anything out and panic up front, okay? Panic up front. Don't wait till the last minute. If you have 6 months to do it, start in month 1 in a state of panic that you need to get it done. Because if you wait until the last minute, it's not going to fly. I literally was working with a group on an architecture project, and they waited until the 23rd hour, and the internet failed, and they blew a $100,000 grant. Panic up front, okay? Very, very important. Records. No matter what you're doing, keep records. Photograph the heck out of everything on your iPhone, okay? Keep them somewhere where you can find them. Make sure they're dated appropriately. Same with paper, same with digital. Make sure you keep records, because during the application, during the reading, the box checking, right? When you're halfway through, when you're a third of the way through, whatever the heck it is, you're going to be required in most cases to produce written or visual proof that you completed the work. You may also have physical on-farm inspections. And at every stage, you have to have checked your boxes, right? Just like the people who are assisting you are checking boxes. Yeah, they filled out the form. Yeah, it's in triplicate. Okay, you have to photograph the old machine. You have to photograph the machine getting dumped somewhere with a demolition permit. You got to have the paperwork. Then you got to photograph the new machine coming in. Then you got to photograph the machine installed. Okay, and there may be other stuff. There may be utility bills and so forth. Record keeping is incredibly important. So I guess, I don't know how long you want me to go on about this. I'm happy to entertain questions, but diligence and sticking to it is absolutely important. You want to think about this as a job. They always say, if you're in a relationship, if you're in a marriage, you have to put the same amount of time aside for that relationship or that marriage that you would for your job. Well, this is another job, and it's another relationship, and it's a kind of marriage. So think of it that way, and I think you'll be successful. Ta-da. There you go.
Thank you, Michael. At this point, I would like to open up the session for questions and for answers.
Bonnie, I just wanted to make sure to make
Please.
1 or 2 additional comments. I would say, 99% of grants are on a reimbursement basis. So that is something else that is really important to think about. And often, it takes a while for payments to get made. So a strategy to have enough capital to cover the costs and sort of, bear through the delays of repayment is important. And then the other thing I forgot to mention was in this, second, Michael, on reading the request for applications, you will find the scoring criteria in that request for applications. And yes, really answer those questions and concentrate on crafting your application around them. The last thing I wanted to mention was that in this year's state budget, they are refunding the farm labor housing program, which I believe is a very low interest loan program that will be run through Department of Labor. And there is funding for a food and fiber infrastructure grant program. So that's going to be another opportunity for paying for, equipment and capital costs directly. Growers will be able to directly apply for that. That's it.
And then the only other thing I was going to add is that there are organizations like FarmNet who are very helpful and they will not write the grant for you, but they can be your sounding board. They can coach you through it. They can help you understand, some of those questions that maybe seem obscure.
Thank you. Those are excellent points. I would also like to note that Cornell Cooperative Extension and its regional teams play a similar role. We won't write the draft of the application for you, but we'll serve as a sounding board and provide advice. I did have a couple of questions. I would like to know if women are included in the socially and economically developed targeted grant programs.
If you read the definition, it is not limited to the groups that are listed. So we say that if you believe you belong to a group that has suffered discrimination, then you can identify as usually the other in that category. You may be asked to justify how how that group is discriminated against, but it is not limited to any kind of racial or ethnic group.
Good to know. The reason I ask is because the FSA actually considers women to be socially and economically disadvantaged for some, but not all programs. They play a little fast and loose with a definition. And so I wondered if that was, if the state had sort of similar definitions.
Yeah, we have a broader definition.
Well, that's very good to know. Another question I wanted to ask, maybe, I don't know, it may be a bit sensitive. It may be asking you to get out your crystal ball. But a lot of state grant programs are ultimately funded by federal program funds from the USDA. And right now, there's a great deal of uncertainty regarding funding of federal programs, including USDA programs. What do you foresee in the future? Do you think this will ultimately impact funding for farm grants at the state level?
I have no idea. We are struggling with the same kind of lack of clarity, lack of information coming from federal funders. And, I think they don't know either. They don't have clarity from the administration exactly what is going to happen. How we're handling it at the department is we have signed grant agreements with the federal government, and we continue to operate our programs as normal unless we hear differently. So that's how we're moving forward. Obviously the circumstances bring into the picture that there is risk. And all we can tell our grantees is that their organization, their business, has to factor in that risk. But we cannot provide any kind of information on what's going to happen because we don't know. We are as uncertain as everyone else.
Thank you.
I got just a couple of quick comments. The organization that gave us our forest restoration grant, or the agency, started recently a webpage where you could sign up and they'll give you whatever updates they have. So far, they have none, but they got so many calls that they realized they had to be proactive in reaching back out to applicants. So if you have applied for a grant or you're thinking of it, just keep your eye on the websites or emails or whatever, because you may be able to get some help. Another one is stuff that's been in the news, which is there were farmers who were involved in doing activities rather that would forestall climate change and had to do with crop rotation, cover crop, and that kind of stuff. On average, and these are people in the Midwest who have large farms and made significant financial commitments. On average, they're holding $1 million worth of debt with no knowledge that they're ever going to get it back. So when people say chaos or uncertainty, realize that can come with a price tag, and these people may lose their farms and their homes. So don't do stuff you can't afford. Be real careful, especially in this particular environment we find ourselves in now. Okay, just letting you know.
An excellent point, Michael. Thank you. I would like to thank very much. I'd like to thank Jessica, Emily, and Michael for your time and for sharing your information and expertise. Tremendously useful. Thank you so much.